Let's get this going. I got everything.
Yeah.
How are you?
How's it going?
Good, man. I just want to say, first of all, I really appreciate taking time out of your busy schedule. So
Of course.
this means the world. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no, of course. Of course. Are we both video and audio
Yeah,
for this? Okay, cool.
yes, if that's okay with you.
Oh yeah, of course.
Cool, cool. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I've already started recording, so I'm going
Okay.
to cut off obviously a little bit of a part of it, but uh, and I can cut off a part of this, but I'll do a little intro
Okay.
for the four people who watch my podcast. So yeah, this is the Untitled Podcast. We have a very special guest. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. This is the six. I get to hold up the six fingers like Michael Jordan did, but Michael Roderick. Thank you for stopping by. Michael is a Broadway producer, a founder of Small Pond Enterprises, the host of Access Anyone podcast. It's out on Spotify,
Mhm.
public speaker, and problem solving extraordinaire. I want to thank you very much for stopping by.
Sure. Happy to be here.
Yeah. I wanted to give a little I don't know if you watch boxing or MMA, like a little Michael Buffer. It's like in this corner we have we have 32 knockouts, all 32 wins, Olympic gold medalist, pound for pound. So that's my little Bruce Buffer kind of intro. So
I love it. Thank you.
there you go. Oh, I would also like to give a shout out to Dina Kaplan. Without you, this would have not happened. That actually rhymed unintentionally, but without you, this wouldn't have happened. So Dina Kaplan, shout out to you.
Yes,
So
indeed.
my first question to you. So
Sure.
from high school English teacher to Broadway producer in 2 years. So
Yes.
short question, how?
You get that. I do get that one a lot. So one of the things that I had learned specifically about Broadway when I was just kind of getting started was that the main thing that producers care about is raising money. And if you can raise a certain amount of money, in many cases you can become a producer.
Okay.
So a lot of the early producers, what they'll do is they'll go to more successful producers, and they'll basically say, "Hey, I'm going to raise this amount of money for you, and can I get credit for it? Can I have my name above the title in the program? Can I be sort of at the front?" Of people's minds as a result of raising this money. And when I realized that for me, I just wanted to get better at raising money. So what I did was I went to producers and I basically said, I'm actually not interested in having credit yet. I don't really care about that piece. I just want to get better at raising money. So if you're willing to give me paperwork and let me go out there and try, then I'm happy to do it. And the byproduct of that was I had a lot of producers who then gave me all of this paperwork for a varying number of shows. So if I was sitting down with an investor, rather than trying to get one, say, I've got one show and do you want to invest in this? I actually had a stack of like four or five that I could tell people about, right? So in many cases, I'd find investors for the various shows. Introduce those investors to those producers. I'd make those connections, and what happened was word got around that I was good at raising money and that I was doing a good job. So I was eventually approached much faster than most to basically be offered credit, where they were like, okay, you've raised this amount before. Would you like to raise a slightly higher amount, and then we'll put your name on the program, we'll put your name above the title, we'll give you credit. So I did that, and then that was my first Broadway project. And then once you've got your name either above the title or you're in a program, what ends up happening is other people hear about it, so you get more opportunities, right? And more people want you to raise for them, and that's really kind of how the journey had happened. But at the time when I first started raising, I was still teaching high school. I was basically just like making calls and trying to meet investors on like evenings and
Okay.
weekends, more so than anything else, to sort of like get things going. But once I did have my first credit and I was starting to, work on other shows and other projects, I eventually left teaching and kind of went into more of the world of just like regular producing and then entrepreneurship.
Wow. Do you feel that teaching kind of was, I wouldn't say a stepping stone. Do you feel that that prepared you for the producing? Were the kids pretty rowdy? Huh?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I taught in an all boys Catholic high school on the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
we definitely had our challenges.
Hmm.
I remember my first year. There were probably like 4 or 5 fights within my first year, like in my classroom at various
Hmm.
at various points. I had a class during seventh period where, no word of a lie, I had cornflakes thrown at me.
Perfect. Wow.
You know, and it was its own challenge of sort of like managing those kids. But after a while, you get used to it. You start to figure out sort of a flow and a way of approaching things. And I got better as a teacher, and I got more organized, and I got a lot better about discipline as a teacher, because when you're your first year of teaching, a lot of the time discipline's really hard because you're
Right.
you're doing it for the first time.
Mhm.
You're having a kid have detention for the first time, and if there's like even the slightest little bit of, oh well, maybe they shouldn't have detention, and you back off on it,
Right. Right.
they just
Right.
walk all over you,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So I eventually had to kind of get to that point where I really stuck to my guns in whatever I was saying or whatever I was doing. And then I eventually became more well known in the school and got more respect and sort of moved in that area. But to answer your question, a lot of producing, and I would say a lot of pretty much anything in life, is teaching, right? It's
Mhm.
it's helping people understand the value of what you have, and they're either deciding to invest their time, they're deciding to invest their money, they're deciding to invest in relationships, like, but
Mhm.
basically you are teaching them, like you're helping them understand what you have and what the value is of what you have. So I think a lot of what I was doing as a teacher was distilling down information that would sometimes feel overwhelming to the students, and that distillation, that ability to sort of think in this way of teaching, really carried over into producing, because I would meet people who they had never even heard of how a Broadway show works, and how
Yeah.
do you invest, and what does it mean to invest, and how do you get that money, how do you get that money back, what does it mean if you're going to lose that money, what are all of the risks and elements associated with it. There's a lot that has to be taught, there's a lot that has to be broken down. So I think that teaching sort of carried over, within, I would say within everything. Like even right now, from a podcast standpoint,
Mhm.
what am I doing? I'm teaching. I'm sort of distilling down the
Right.
things that happened in my life and saying,
Mhm.
these are the lessons I learned. These are the models that are out here. This is the process that I saw in terms of how something works.
Wow. Yeah. That is amazing. Would you have an analogy to kind of describe what it's like to be a Broadway producer? So like I heard somebody saying being a head coach of, let's say, of a football team, they're saying it's like being a father, it's like being a therapist, it's like being a drill sergeant. They're saying take all those three mixed in one. Would you have an analogy of what it's like? Because I can only imagine how stressful, how rewarding of a real world analogy of things of what it would be like to be a Broadway producer.
Yeah. So the analogy I use all the time is, imagine that you get to this tree and you have to climb
Okay.
this tree,
Okay.
and it's a very, very tall tree.
Uh-huh.
So you're like climbing it, you're getting smacked with branches, you're getting cut up on the way
Okay.
up there, you're sweating, it's really, really intense. And you get to the very, very top.
Mhm.
And at the very, very top, there is the most beautiful view imaginable.
Oh, wow.
And you stand there and you look at all the beauty and all of the wonder, and you're like, this is incredible. This is an amazing world to be in, to be a part of. And just as you're, really kind of feeling like I could stay up here for a pretty long time, there's somebody down at the bottom of the tree saying, hey, you got to come back
You
down and
gotta come
climb the
back down.
tree again.
Yeah, yeah. Oh man.
And that's
Wow.
really what it is. Like that, you do all of this work of raising the money, of in some cases finding a property and sort of showing it to other producers, or getting other producers on board, and you get this show up that's usually beautiful and amazing, and you get this great audience. But once the show either closes or it's already running and it's doing sort of what it needs to do, the very next phase is you're going and you're finding something else. You're going to raise some money on something else, because the entertainment cycle never ends in that world. Like, you just consistently raise money, put up shows, consistently raise money, put up shows, and that is the career, if that's the journey that you decide to embark on.
Wow. Yeah, yeah, that question worked out a little bit better than I thought it would. That was a vivid, yeah. As soon as you get up there, it was you got to come back down and do it over. But
Yep.
no. So you have, I want to make sure that I have this correctly. I have this written down somewhere. Oh, so your saying or slogan is not up if you want ask the room, I'm already butchering it, but the room that you want access to, it's not about what you say about yourself, but it's about what people say when you leave the room.
Yes.
How did you stumble upon that realization, and how long did it take you? 'Cause that's pretty profound.
Thank you. Thank you. So I had a period in my life where I just ended up, I was getting all of these introductions, and
Mm.
people would sort of introduce me as this. They'd call me a super connector, or they'd say you have to meet you have to meet Michael, and like all these different types of things. And as I would have these meetings, I would often ask somebody, well, what prompted you to meet, or what prompted you to want to reach out or sort of get together. And then the other person would say, so and so said I had to meet you. So
Oh,
and
okay.
so said it
Okay.
was this really great sort of experience. So the more that I thought about that, the more that I realized
Hmm.
that so often we kind of get into this place of thinking like we have to come up with something, we have to say something, we have to be, we have to be something, um, and that's what's going to really move the needle. But so often it's what somebody else is saying, right? So
Hmm.
like if
Okay.
you are taking the time to think about how are you positioning yourself, how are you presenting yourself, how are you presenting your ideas, if other people then carry those ideas and then go and talk about you
Mhm.
when you're not there in a good way, right?
Yeah.
Then you start getting lots of intros. You start having lots of opportunities and lots of possibilities. And the only reason somebody will share something else is if it makes them look good, right? So you've always got to
Oh,
think
yeah.
about, like, how am I presenting something or sharing something that's going to make the other person look good when they're talking
Yeah.
about it?
Okay. No, that's good. Yeah, it's almost like a flex for them, because it's
Mm-hmm.
like I know, so it's like yeah, that's like oh that person, yeah, it's like that person that's doing that great thing. It's like yeah, I know them. I've had coffee with that person, or they've came to the party, or we're really good friends. So it's almost like a yeah, it's almost like it's a good flex, almost
Yeah,
without
yeah.
flexing.
It
But
makes you. It makes. Yeah, it makes you look good. And the other thing, just from the connector standpoint, is let's say you introduce me to one of your friends, right? And your
mhm.
friend meets with me, and let's say your friend is trying to succeed in the music business. Let's say,
Okay,
right? And let's say that I know a lawyer who has worked at some very, very high up areas in the music business, and I introduce your friend to that lawyer. And the lawyer then meets with that person and really kind of likes them and says, I think you should meet my friend who's a producer for, this this album, in this,
Mhm.
and this group, and then your friend ends up on some like larger music artist's album. Now, what does your friend think of you? They think,
Yeah.
wow, you
Yeah.
introduced me to that person who made,
Yeah.
this particular thing happen. So now what's going to happen is your friend is going to talk to their friends about the fact that they need to meet you because you're the person who made the intro that caused their career to take off. It made a major change. And the thing I often say about this is that the keys to all the doors we need open are in other people's pockets,
Woo.
right?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Could you
Sure,
please say that again? That
sure,
that was wow.
sure. So the keys to all the doors you need open are in other people's pockets,
Wow.
right? So the thing is, there are other people who they have things that are just part of their life. They have relationships that they've always had. They've had, there are people that they know. There are worlds that they're a part of that are just there for them. It just works for
Huh.
them. But they're what they have is often something that you're looking for and that you could use help with, right? And that you could
Mhm.
use support with. And I think the most important element to always remember with that particular statement is that you yourself, no matter where you are in an industry, no matter how successful you are, no matter what part of life you're in, you are also sitting with a pocket full of keys. There
Wow.
are things that other people need that you have access to right now that to you are just commonplace. It's just
Huh.
natural. It's just easy, but
Yeah.
it actually really matters to someone else. Right. And then they're like, wow, like I could really use support with this. And you can make that support happen very, very easily. Right. So often what ends up happening is we get so concerned about where we want to go and we think that and it just comes up. It's part of a lot of what we learn. We think we have to do this alone. We think we just have to work hard and we're going to be discovered or we're going to have this
Yeah.
opportunity, we're going to have all these different types of things, but nothing happens in this world without other people,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. We saw that during COVID. I think
Mhm.
every little operation that we took for granted, we saw how, even something as small as toilet paper and stuff like that, for some people, people were losing their minds, and we're all how reliant we are on supply chains and this coming in and the trucking. And then it's like none of us really exists in a vacuum. We just get so, I think, wrapped up in our daily routines. We have the illusion of
Yeah.
that, but we're by far we all breathe the same air. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And think about it this way, right? If like even if we use COVID as an example and what you're talking about with the toilet paper, right?
Hmm.
So we had this whole period, and if you lived in the city, you remembered this period where
Right.
basically it was like you would go to the grocery store and you couldn't find toilet paper. You'd go
Yeah.
on like Amazon and you couldn't
Uh-huh.
find toilet. Like it was just like brutal, right? Where you just like there was a whole period where like people were just hoarding toilet paper and you
Yeah.
you couldn't find any, right? But imagine you're a delivery person for one of the toilet paper brands and you live next door to somebody, you have just become the most popular person in the
Yes.
world,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And,
Yeah.
and and before that, weeks before that, that thing mattered, you were that person that nobody even paid attention to,
Hmm.
right? So the thing is like we so often just downplay all of the things that we have because we think, well, that's not going to be valuable, but it is valuable to somebody else, right? It
Yeah.
is valuable to somebody else. It means something to somebody else. And the more that we think about that, the more that we say, like, okay, well, what do I have and how could it be valuable to somebody else? There's a saying by Zig Ziglar, which is that you
Mm.
can get anything in the world that you want if you'll help enough other people get the things that they want.
Ooh.
And it's 100% true. Like, if there's anything that you're trying to accomplish or that you're trying to do, chances are there's somebody who can make that thing happen 10 times faster than
Hmm.
you can. There's somebody who
Yeah, yeah,
has more money, more
yep,
resources, more whatever, right? But there's also something that that person does not have. And I don't care
yeah,
how high up they are, wherever they like, whatever their level, there is
yeah.
something that they don't have, and there's a good chance that you might have it, and you
Huh.
might be able to help them with that.
Wow. That is my, I've never, it's funny, I think it goes to the whole thing of like maybe beauty's in the eye of the beholder. What one person sees is like a one man's trash is another man's treasure. But when you were talking about the concept of distilling things, I've never had it broken down like that, more so in a business or working sense where it's like, wow, that's something I definitely have taken for granted. I've never really thought of that. Mind blown for sure.
Awesome.
I would also say this too. You should trademark the super connector. That sounds like a superhero name. I like that. I was like, you should get that one.
No, I appreciate the thought there. There are a lot of people who have sort of used that title
Mhm.
in different capacities, and there's even some books. I was actually featured
Okay.
in a book called Super Connector at
Wow.
one point, where they talked about the processes of different super connectors, sort of like in the like in the world. So it is a very popular. It is a very popular term. It also is very fraught. Like I've had lots of instances where people have had actually bad experiences with super connectors,
Hmm.
and also lots of good experiences with super connectors. But it's one of those terms that it can have kind of a light side and a dark side to it.
Yeah.
Is what I've seen.
No, for sure. Excuse me. It's
Yeah.
Zoom is there we go.
Yeah.
Back. So small pond enterprises. How did you come up with the concept? How did you come up with the name? And how long was this? Is this something kind of you knew you would do, or is this something you kind of stumbled into?
Sure. So there's a number of sort of like a multi-part question, right?
Mhm.
But I'll start with the name because the name basically lends itself to the explanation of the concept itself, right?
Mhm.
So I'm originally from Rhode Island,
Okay.
and when I got offered two jobs on the same day, so I was working on a show, um, and I got a phone call from LaSalle Academy in New York City,
Mhm.
where I had interviewed for a English teacher position at the school teaching sophomores. And then the very next voicemail, I was living in Rhode Island. The very next voicemail was from a school down the street from where I lived in Rhode Island that I went to, my old high school, and they offered me the head of the English department position, where I would run the entire drama program. I would basically be the boss, and the option with New York was I can go and I can be a teacher of sophomores. So definitely not nearly as glamorous as
Yeah.
the second voicemail. But I had a lot of conversations with friends about my decision, about where I should go, like what I should do, what I should do next. And one of my friends said, Mike, here you're a big fish in a small pond.
Mhm.
Everybody knows you. In Rhode Island, you can kind of get anything you want. Like you're known here. You go to New York and nobody's going to know you. That place
Mhm.
is huge. It's
Mhm.
really really hard to sort of manage. And I said I'm going to go to New York and I'm going to create my own small pond, and that's what
Oh,
I did. And that was the
okay.
concept. When I first came here, I basically said, because I started in theater, right? And I was
Mhm.
doing like smaller theatrical projects and shows. And I said, how do I gather a small group of people around me that are also interested in theater, that are also interested in doing really cool projects and shows and like working on things. And what I found in that was, I'm hosting these events, I'm doing all these like things on the theatrical side. And what I found was that because I had created a small pond, I was automatically, without actually doing that much a big fish. Like
Hmm.
suddenly, because I was the organizer of
Okay.
community and like getting people together and like launching shows and doing
Mhm.
these projects, I suddenly had a brand that I had never, like necessarily like originally sought out and
Right.
said, I want to be this. So when I saw that, I had this realization that there is a dynamic of if you are able to create a small pond around you, then in many cases you become just by default the big fish.
Mhm.
And in many cases, you can get a lot of stuff done when you're in that capacity. So that's really where a lot of the business model and the elements, even to the work I do today, came from, where it was like, okay, if you can find a following of people who are really, really loyal to you and really want to be connected with you and support you, um, and talk to them about what you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do, you are going to often move a lot faster. You're going to have a lot more opportunities and a lot more possibilities. So that's why I ended up shifting into the work that I do now, where I work with a lot of subject matter experts in packaging and positioning their ideas, right? I help them figure out how are they going to get paid for their brains and how are they going to assemble their own small ponds of clients and colleagues and people to help achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve.
Nice. Wow, that's fascinating.
Thanks.
I have, I have another question for you.
Sure.
So, and I know this is something that you do. So, for the people watching, I did not take this idea. This is your thing, but this is what I have. So, if you could have access to anyone, past, present, future, real, animated, there's no limit. Anyone. It could be Spider-Man. That's the Silver Surfer. Who would you choose to have access to, and why?
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, it was the on my podcast. I used to ask that at the
I
end
know
of
that's.
every
Yep.
single episode.
Yep.
We called it the golden question. So I always used to when I would do the show, I would say they have to be living,
Mhm.
as opposed to fantasy and dead. So you're I know my answer on the living side,
Mhm.
but I've never. It's been a while since I've thought about the like if I could like the fantasy element is also really a fascinating one, right? Where you're
Mhm.
just like, oh wow. Um, feel like I don't know. I'd probably want to sit down with like I think Shakespeare. Like I love to
Okay.
sit down with Shakespeare. That would be awesome.
And why is that?
I loved Shakespeare as a kid,
Mhm.
and I love the variance of the stories and all of the different like Shakespeare's responsible for so many new words.
Mhm.
So I just feel like, there'd have to be probably some sort of like translator tool or
Yeah.
something because I probably wouldn't be speaking in iambic pentameter very well.
Yeah.
But just to like jam on ideas with somebody who had that many ideas would be pretty cool.
Yeah. No, imagine how many ideas he would have if he had access to technology.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's
Crazy.
that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
Um, I gotta take it this. I don't. It's funny. I thought about this question too.
Yeah.
I know it's funny because I would definitely say the fantasy part does throw it into a different stratosphere, but something
Right.
would be more along the lines of I don't know, maybe some sort of, I guess, not to get too meta or anything, some sort of celestial being or something like that that could give you
Nice.
more so a broader perspective of where we are in space and time. Just kind of, it probably would be something that would be mind altering, but just something of that nature that has the ability, because we tend to think we're the center of the universe, and we're not wrong in the sense of that that's what we see every day, but we can't really fathom how big, how small we are. So it's
Yeah.
like you say, how big if you said how big something is, even something on the planet, they say, well, it's like 12 cruise ships. It's like, well, that's kind of hard to picture. I've seen one, but I can't fathom that something's uh, a million light years away. Like I
Yeah,
don't even know how to, I don't even really know how to quantify that. So it'd be probably for me, I think it would be something along those lines.
that'd be pretty wild. Yeah. Yeah, I do think it'd be so fascinating if they're like, if you were to meet some kind of entity that knew more
Yeah,
about what the heck
yeah,
is actually
exactly.
happening in the universe,
No,
right?
for sure.
You know, oh man, that's
Because
wild.
it's like what you're saying too, the kind of the realization for me, and I can only speak for me.
Hmm.
From what I've seen, I'm like, I forgot who said this, but it's like we're all coping with existence. Cope can seem like it's a bad word, but we're all
Hmm.
still trying, no matter how much money you have or what you accomplish, we're still all trying to make sense of this.
Oh
There's
yeah,
still there's this like it's like, yes, I accomplished this and that, but then it's like I thought I had it 3 months ago, but now I'm like, there's never a sense of like, I got everything figured out. Like
oh
that's
yeah,
never gonna happen. And it's beautiful, it's scary, but it's like humbling too. It's like no matter what you
yeah,
accomplish, everyone's going, if they're honest, everyone's kind of all going through that.
yeah.
So
I 100% agree.
that can be a beautiful thing. If you could talk to your 25-year-old self, looking back now, I wouldn't say advice. I mean, you could say advice, but what would you tell them? Is there anything that you would say
Yeah.
to them?
Let's see, 25.
Or
I
it could
was,
be any other, it could be any other. I just chose that, just maybe a little bit over 21, but just any age where you feel it's like kind of pivotal turning, could be younger,
sure,
older.
sure. Yeah, I mean, I think, in my 20s, I was still, in my 20s, I was still teaching. I was still sort of in, I was doing theater, but I was still teaching. I had a number of things that were going on. I think the thing that I would probably advise myself would be um, to be thoughtful about money, because
Mhm,
I think in the early days, you get a paycheck and it's
mhm,
just like, I got all this money. Like, let me go and do like everything imaginable. But there's so much value in saving. There's so much value in thinking about how much are you really spending on things, and do you actually need those things? Like, there's a lot that can be unlocked when you are being thoughtful about money. So I think that would, like, if I were to go back, that would be the thing to basically, say to my 25-year-old self, you know, this right now feels like it's just kind of, it just drops in your lap, every time,
right.
every time you get this paycheck. Um, and it feels like it's just always going to keep coming, but that's not necessarily going to be the
Mhm,
world. Like, that's not necessarily going to be the case. So what could you do to save? What could you do to think more carefully about what you're spending on? And my 25-year-old self would probably, be like, screw you, old man, leave me
yeah,
alone.
yeah,
I'm going to the club. I'll see you later,
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
thing. But if I could, give that advice, that would be the advice. Because I do think at a young age, a lot of the time, there's this feeling of this will always be the same,
Mhm,
versus recognizing and understanding that there are very few things that sort of stay consistent and sort of stay, like, live in that sort of land of permanence. Like, if you would ask me when I was in my 20s if I would have ever gone into the fields that I've gone into, I would have said you were crazy, and I would have said
mhm.
I'm going to be teaching until I retire. Like that,
Okay,
like I totally would
okay.
have been in that world, in that space, and have not left that job, or like gone into producing, or I wouldn't have expected any of that.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I also, to tie this back in, I was listening to your podcast. I think it was episode 277, where it's like something about money. Correct me if I'm wrong, money being the energy or the met. I forget the exact title, but it was number 277, and I forget.
Uh-huh.
But I remember something that her, it was like thinking about money in a different type of way. And
Yes.
it was kind of, I forget the exact word, but it was just something to that effect of just thinking about it, the way you think about money and stuff. That I think that episode really, that one really spoke to me.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. We've had a number of guests on over the years who have had some very, very pointed things to say about money. And I think like um one of the ones is the idea of it being like an energetic
Yep, that's
exchange,
what it was. Yep,
right?
yeah, that's exactly what it was. That's what I was.
Yeah. And that's such a different way of thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
Because we often don't think about the energy behind money, right? But there is energy there, and
Hmm.
there are choices that we're making, and there's energy that we bring to every situation. We can bring really positive energy to that situation. We can bring really negative energy to that situation. We can bring no energy to that situation,
Hmm.
right? So like even thinking about an interview like this, right? If I were if I brought a negative energy to this interview, right? And I was just
Hmm.
like not really answering anything or not really, or like giving you like really short, like one word answers, you'd feel kind of the energy and like the whole flow of the conversation would
I've
drop,
had that happen. I've
right?
had that happen. Yes.
Yeah. So, but when you have a more sort of high energy where you're like, okay, I'm going to engage, I'm going to answer the questions, I'm going to think about the questions, I'm going to spend time, it ups the energy and folks
Hmm.
feel, a lot better about it. And it's very, very similar where, if you're paying somebody, but you're paying somebody reluctantly, and you're like, yeah,
Right.
I guess I have to pay you,
Yeah. Yeah.
it has a whole different feel than you're like, oh my God, I'm so happy to be
Right.
able to give
Right.
you this money to have this result or have this thing that you're doing for me, that kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that you're a comic book fan. I don't know what it is. I'll take a shot in
just
the dark.
just a little bit,
Just a
right?
little, just a little bit. I have a question for you. So, what are
Yeah.
your thoughts? I don't know if you've been watching the latest Marvel movies. I know you're a
Yes.
DC guy. What are your
I am
thoughts
a
on?
Marvel guy all the
Oh,
way
Marvel guy.
through. Yeah,
Okay, I'm
totally.
sorry.
Marvel guy all the way
Okay,
through. I
okay,
sometimes watch the DC.
yeah.
Like I'll every once in a while watch the DC if it's on like if it's on like cable or something, or
Mhm.
something like that, or streaming rather. But Marvel, I go to every Marvel movie on like opening night. So
Okay, perfect. That's perfect. This will take me right into the next question. What
yeah.
are your thoughts on Thanos? Do you believe? Do you believe? Do you believe he's a villain? Do you believe? Because the giant, giant
Yeah.
purple guy. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts on his worldview, if you have any?
I mean, I think that he's a very complicated character, right? And I
Hmm.
think that's what makes him such an interesting character, not only in the MCU, but also in the comics, in the comics themselves, right?
Hmm.
And when you have somebody who they believe that basically getting rid of half of the Earth's population is going to make things better,
Hmm.
like you have to ask yourself, well, what influences that belief, right? Like
Yeah.
where does that come from? But on the other side, just from a narrative standpoint, you can't have an action oriented comic book movie
Hmm.
and not have your villain feel like your villain, right? So I think
Right.
like there's a complication to him that it is addressed if you look at Endgame, and you look at the very beginning of Endgame when they show up on his planet after he's
Hmm.
done the snap and everything, like you can see the sort of
Yeah.
logic and way
Yeah.
that he's thinking. But if you look at Infinity War, he's got to be presented as like just the bad villain
Sure.
trying to collect the stones, right? Like
Yeah.
that's just hands down like what
Hmm.
it has to be. And I think that just with any character, I think like the most interesting characters are not the heroes in any story, it's the anti-heroes,
Hmm.
right? It's the folks who are a little bit flawed, who are kind of like, we feel like we can identify with them and sort of like see like who they, who they are. Like we feel more connected to them. Spider-Man is one of my favorite, is one of my
Okay.
favorite
Yeah.
characters, because of that more sort of like anti-hero thing. Like Peter Parker is flawed.
Hmm.
He makes poor choices, and in essence, his entire superhero journey ends up being motivated by guilt for something he did, right?
Yeah.
Like it's,
Yeah. Yeah.
so that is very interesting and complicated to, just explore. And just psychologically, it's a much more interesting character than somebody who just like, they got their powers and they have their powers and there's kind of nothing else to it, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I think that that's a big, and I think that's a major aspect of, if you did, if you do look at the world of DC, that's a major part of the whole like Superman versus Batman debate, because
Hmm.
Superman's just always kind of presented as he's got all
Yeah.
these powers, he can just kind of do anything.
Yeah.
He'll like,
Yeah.
he can't be defeated except for kryptonite, you
Yeah.
know? And he doesn't really have like, he's not presented in a way that he's got a lot of problems, right?
People don't
Like,
relate to him.
yeah,
People relate more to I've said this all along, but people relate more to Batman has no superpowers. But you
yep,
see the flaw, you see the loneliness, you see the kid who lost his parents, you see this and that, but it's like Superman's just like no one can relate to him because it's just like I have superpowers. I pretend not to have them, but I was like, it's very interesting that you say that.
yeah. Yeah. And the interesting thing too, is that we're talking about this in this way, but
Hmm.
right now there is probably another podcast going on or another conversation going on where somebody is just defending Superman to
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the teeth, right?
yeah.
Like it is just what, just what it is. And we all have our opinions and our ways of thinking about these things, and either we connect with those opinions or we, you know disagree with them, right? And sort of
Hmm.
push back, push back against them. One of the things I often will say about thought leadership specifically, like when you want, if you want people to follow you, and you're interested in sort of building a following, is that you want to find a dominant narrative to challenge. Like you want to find something that
Wow.
everybody else is saying that they
Okay.
think is true, and in your lived experience it hasn't been true, and then you want to share that, right? Like you want to talk about the fact that that thing was not true, and that you disagree with what everybody else is saying, because there's an audience out there who also is like, oh my god, thank you, somebody said it, right? Like somebody brought it up. And now going back to that small pond idea, you're gathering that small group of people around you who also disagree with the stance that the larger public is considering.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I think the fact too that just the fact that we're having this deep of a conversation over something that's not necessarily real, I think that's the amazing thing within itself. It's not real, it's not out there, but the fact that people can actually get into heated debates, or you can think this deeply into these fake worlds that don't exist, that definitely says a lot. I know
Yeah.
you said your favorite superhero is Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Would you have if you could have any set of superhero powers? Would you have his skill set, his power set?
I'll tell you, I don't know if I would go with interesting. Like, I find him a very interesting character psychologically. I
Hmm.
don't know if I would necessarily. It could be really fun to sort of be able to climb walls and swing on webs and have the
Hmm.
super strength and all, all those different types of things. Interestingly enough, like when I think about superpowers, the idea of being able to fly is such a fascinating one, and
Hmm.
sort of like how that would work and like what you would do, and like, so that's always been one that's really kind of stood out to me as a really interesting, superpower. um that, and the other one is that the ability to become invisible is also just a
Oh, okay.
fascinating one, right?
Yeah.
Where you're just like all the different sort of things that you could explore and do, and yeah, it's just it's pretty wild to think about.
Okay. I have one, getting close. I have one last question for you before we
Sure.
kind of break things up. So if you could have, like people say auras and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Some people can see them and things. If you could have one song that people would hear when they meet you that you feel would be a good representation of you, what would it be and why?
Oof. That's a really, really good question because I have such an eclectic sort of taste in music.
Mhm.
There's so many sort of different songs that I really enjoy, and that I really think about. Um, but I feel like I'm a pretty like I like I'm I'm kind of like just like I like being fun. I like sort of
Mhm.
having like I like telling jokes and kind of being goofy and things like that. So I feel like I'd probably end up like if I had like kind of a theme song following me
Yeah.
around, it would be it would be probably something like it would be probably something like a Ben Folds Five or like a Third Eye Blind or like one of
Okay.
those like very like
Yeah.
kind of poppy
Yeah.
like
Hot, bro.
you
Yeah.
know type things because of that just like fun energy
Mhm.
that I tend to lean more into than anything else.
Got you. No, it's a good choice.
Thanks.
I would say thank you very much for stopping by. I
Of
really
course.
appreciate this. How can the people get in touch with you if they're trying to, they
Sure,
would like
sure.
to work with you?
Yeah, yeah. So they can just go to smallpondenterprises.com. That's where you can find pretty much all the information about the stuff I'm doing and things that I've been up to. I've had I've had the podcast for a really long time. The podcast is on hiatus right now, but it's just access to anyoneepodcast.com. And there's a very, very large number of episodes on there. So you could kind of just go down the rabbit hole. I think we've probably got like close to almost 300, I would say, on there, if not more. Yeah. So,
On Spotify, correct?
yes.
It
Yep.
is on Spotify.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I would say thank you for your time, sir. This was a pleasure.
Of
Again,
course.
shout out to Dina Kaplan. You're
Yes,
amazing. Thank
indeed.
you for bringing
Thanks,
us
Dina.
together, connecting the connector. And thank
Yes,
you
indeed.
again. And have a good one.
You as well. Take
Yeah,
care.
you too. Bye.
Bye.